Hey, welcome to the Arsenic Theory channel. Today I want to talk about an article, I'm not sure if you heard, but I heard it so many times that basically any politically conservative media is being censored and also their ads removed. It's one thing for, certain corporations such as, including YouTube and others to actually censor out certain content, but it's another thing for them to start removing ads. And I've been hearing about that for such a long time. And recently, I read an article on Breitbart, which I wanna, read here on air with you. It's called Financial Blacklisting. NewsGuard advises advertisers to avoid pro-Trump media. So apparently there is an extension you can get that will actually filter out certain news based on their content. So let's see. So NewsGuard, the news filtering browser extension, recently partnered with Microsoft and run by New Conservatives. The New Conservatives are the ones that started by George W. Bush. During the invasion of Iraq, Obama, Clinton alumni, and other assorted Trump haters. So popular now, so trendy to hate Trump, even though he's an elected, president, has advised advertisers to withdraw their business from websites on its blacklist of unreliable news websites, a list that includes Breitbart News, the Drudge Report, and the Daily Mail. So the way I usually approach news is I'd go to Drudge Report, as you can see over here, and I look at what they have available, what kind of news, and I read through the headlines. If something captures my imagination, I go for it and read further. So obviously people get their news from more mainstream media such as CNN, Fox News. I think in America it's much easier to censor people by removing money from them, in this case removing the ads, than by outright censorship. Outright censorship works so well in other countries, but it doesn't really doesn't really work well in a democratic and in a democratic country like the United States, where there are checks and balances, where there are watch groups out there. So it's kind of impossible. But if you remove the money, kind of the blood source of any kind of business, any kind of enterprise, you will leave them stranded on the streets. So let's see. So the NewsGuard's tactic is similar, the one used by far left smear peddlers, sleeping giants, whose mission is to spread baseless accusations of racism and white supremacy to the advertisers of pro-Trump media outlets in order to put them out of business and silence their voice. That's very common nowadays to use all these labels. If you want to just shut your opponent up, just call them anti-Semite, homophobic, or white supremacist or racist, and you will shut him or her up. In most cases it's him. You'll shut him up real fast, and you don't even need to present any counter arguments or anything of that sort. Just use any of those labels. So let's see, two of the other sites on NewsGuard's list, Breitbart News and the Daily Mail, are also prominent targets. Okay, so Breitbart News is something that I'm reading right now. The effect isn't merely to silence pro-Trump media. Yeah, sure. It also ensures advertisers don't market their products to Trump voters, causing them to rely less and less on consumers in their heartland and more on progressive consumers who read establishment newspapers. Interesting. Yeah, of course. And I was actually watching I'm going to show you a YouTube video today about Supreme Court blocks Louisiana abortion law from taking effect. And I don't want to get into kind of the details of what the video was about. Obviously, it was about abortion. But what kind of concerned me the most is kind of one-sided view that is always being portrayed on a CNN. And so I left some notes, on that video, something to the effect of that, because it's so one-sided, CNN basically contributes to continued political polarization in our country. And instead of kind of uniting people from different, by presenting different point of views and creating dialogue between various groups, instead of that, they just kind of present always this one-sided view. And what happens is, as a result of it, I'm not sure if it's intended consequence or not, but inadvertently, right-wing groups come out, and the alternative media is generated because of this doing, because of their one-sided kind of views on a CNN. And there was one person who left a reply on my comment, something like, Fox News is not better. And I agree. CNN, Fox News, all of them present this one-sided view instead of, giving you a range of opinions to choose from. And, that's what causes all this, hysteria and all this, right-wing, inclined political movements to sprawl in our society. So let's continue reading this article. Let me pull it up here. The effect. Okay, so the ultimate result, and this is actually the key sentence here, the key phrase here. The ultimate result is that corporations cater their products and corporate values even more to the latter and not at all to the former. So basically they, again, this contributes to the continued polarization, political polarization in the country, because if the corporations will continually cater, big corporations such as, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and other, news media outlets, if they continue to cater to their own kind of like-minded individuals, they will be more, they'll become basically supercharged in their own ideology, and they will not be exposed to other, political viewpoints. And it's not good, because they will stay in their niche groups. That's some, political polarization has been talked ad nauseum by, Cass Sunstein and even Zbigniew Brzezinski. That it is a real phenomenon. And by corporations censoring or removing ads, removing money streams from alternative points of view, only contributes to the continued polarization here. And another thing, I was actually thinking about, corporations. So, in a Soviet Russia and, communist China, at least it is crystal clear who controls the information. The government has, total monopoly of what kind of information their people receive. And anything divergent, anything that is dissident is crushed immediately. So with the United States, the situation is a little trickier. So in the United States, corporations actually, control what the values are in a society, what kind of trendy thought processes are, and they do that through basically money. So in this case, they are controlling who gets the ads. So they are encouraging advertisers from removing their ads from unkosher, so to speak, political speech. So it kind of reminds me of the movie Rollerball. I'm not sure, let me show you the Rollerball. It's from 1975. It stars James Caan and others. It's actually So basically, it presents like a dystopian future where a corporation basically controls everything, all the facets of society, and they have this violent game that they play called Rollerball, and that's how they keep people entertained and ultimately controlled. So again, crystal clear. So at least they should have the courtesy of, those corporations should have a courtesy of telling us that we are either trying to or already control kind of all the milieus of society, our mores, our thoughts, etc. So let's continue on. By licensing the NewsGuard ratings, advertisers limit their advertising, including programmatic advertising, to sites that meet the NewsGuard criteria, explains the NewCon Extension's official website. Okay. Advertisers use this data and related information about sites to craft efficient and safe ad campaigns. I've been hearing a lot also from fellow YouTubers who have their channels, and frequently the somebody at YouTube removes their ads, and they demonetize a lot of videos because idiot reports them because they got offended. Oh my god, they got offended from the video because they expressed their opinion on abortion or homosexuality or something like that, and they got offended. I mean, come on. I thought, America was about accepting all divergent point of views. There is no kind of right or wrong, just, there is freedom, there is total liberty and freedom unless you are infringing on freedom and liberty of others. But as long as you are expressing your viewpoints, it should be okay. So what is programmatic advertising? So programmatic advertising is essentially the use of automation to purchase ads as opposed to manual selection and placement of ads by humans. Adweek calls programmatic advertising the most important trend in advertising. So I guess, if you are looking for a job, that's where you can get in and contribute more to censorship of, conservative media, because that's only people they, censor. They don't censor themselves. It's interesting how they don't censor, liberally, minded, how they don't censor liberally minded individuals. Only censor the conservatives. Anybody that expresses the views that I guess they consider archaic or something like that, or old style, they will, censor that. It reminds me again of, Soviet Russia, probably one of the prime examples of total dictatorship, complete authoritarianism. So when when Bolshevik Revolution happened in the 1917, 18, after that, there was a brief period of freedom. That was akin to the 1990s. There was a brief period of freedom, economic freedom. There was a freedom of even political parties. There were actually numerous political parties at that time, but then they kind of crushed everything. The Bolsheviks basically took control, and they basically outright banned all other parties. But so what happened was, after they seized control over the media, over the telegraph, over the telephone, over everything, over all the means of communication, they began to label people that were not, that did not carry this socialist, this communist ideology. They began to label them as traitors, but also they started to use the term old believers, or like old style believers, and they would outright go and kill them, or they would execute them. So what these old style believers believed is that they believed in Christianity. They believed in, family values. They believed, in a czar. They believed in, other things that, were, prevalent before the Bolshevik Revolution. But because they carried this, outmoded, this archaic ideology, they were basically sentenced to death. So the same thing happens here. If you do believe in family values, if you do believe in, kind of the traditional, gender roles, the major advertisers and the major corporations will put heavy pressure on you through, first of all, by censorship. If they cannot do that, if they are legally challenged, then they'll just pull advertisers. So let's continue on. Ad tech companies have software to keep brands safe from hate speech and pornography. And of course, that those terms, hate speech and pornography, have pretty much, so arbitrary. I mean, you can never define what actually hate speech or what pornography is. That's why, pornography was defined as, if you see it and you know it, it's a pornography or something like that. So, but, you cannot define that. So it's completely, subjective, and corporations use, those loose terms in order to ban speech that they do not want. But artificial intelligence cannot root out false news because false news are designed to look like real news. Okay, blah, blah, blah. So this is a short article, but it's, worthy to read, worthy to kind of keep in mind, what, corporations do and how they, combat free speech, essentially. And of course, they always do that under the cloak of, we are trying basically to, separate the fake news from the real news. That's what we are trying to do. They always have a very good reason why they are, censoring you, either by removing ads or whatever. They're saying, oh yeah, we want to protect you. Like they're some kind of, big daddy, and we need his help. Oh yeah, please protect us, big daddy. The news media, please protect us. We have no idea how to think on our own. We don't know how to discern, fake news from, real news. Yeah, please help us. Give us all these extensions, let the artificially intelligent, whatever, programs decide what we should view and what we shouldn't. So the project's investors include Publicis Group, one of the big four multinational ad agencies, whose subsidiaries include a number of high-profile advertising firms. Okay, so, here's an interesting tidbit. Let me read that to you so you can see it. No, it should be fine. Actually, let me increase the view. Should be okay, right? So controversially, one of Publicis Group's other subsidiaries is Corvus, a Washington, D.C. based PR and crisis management firm, which has represented the nation of Saudi Arabia since the September 11 attacks. Well, as you remember from, news that was coming out after the September 11 attacks, all those hijackers, they turned out to be, Saudis. So let's see. So apparently, Saudi Arabia probably got a pretty bad name after that and pretty bad image. So let's see. Company led an aggressive media and lobbying campaign in the US to defend Saudi Arabia's war in Yemen. Interesting. Yeah, so those, ad agencies, those PR firms, they'll defend anybody for money. I mean, they are, guns for hire. They'll, you tell them, character assassinate, this media or protect this media, and they'll do it as long as, it fits the bill. So let's see. The Beltway establishment figures who started NewsGuard claim to be non-partisan. Oh yeah, that's another term that they like to hide behind. Non-partisan. Well, of course they're non-partisan. I guess if anybody pays them enough money, they'll, do whatever, their employer asks. They'll play whatever music they want. But the logic of their system leads towards the demonetization of pro-Trump and populist conservative media, as well as the few anti-establishment sites of the left that are also on the extension's blacklist, like the Daily Kos. I'm not too familiar with that. But yeah, that's what they do nowadays. They demonetize. I guess we are not in a, Soviet Russia or communist China. They just, oh yeah, that's right, yeah. So this is a capitalist America. They just remove money. Yep, I see. It's an approach, so not much different from Soviet Russia. Not good. I don't know where to go else. It's an approach that dovetails with the rise of financial blacklisting, in which left-wing and anti-Trump agitators pressure online funding platforms, payment processors, and credit card companies to cut off service from conservatives and anti-establishment figures. Yeah, I hear a lot that, for example, like PayPal will remove you from their client list and remove your accounts completely, if enough people basically complain on you because you express certain radical views. Yeah, nowadays is to say that, hey, I'm a heterosexual male and I'm pro-family values, etc., things like that could be considered a radical, maybe even a hate speech, because you're not including all these different groups in your, in the views you're expressing. So let's see. The goal is to render independent media unprofitable, blacklisting and censoring them by cutting off their income. Yep, that's the simplest way to do it in a capitalist system, is to cut off your funding. You have no money coming in, well, you can go on the streets, but who's going to listen to you on the streets, right? They'll think you're just crazy. This is, it's not like it used to be back in like 18th, 17th century in Europe, where, kind of street preachers would go up on the on a soapbox and, preach the gospel, or whatnot. So that's actually where the soap opera comes in from this term soapbox. So people would actually get up on a soapbox, this wooden crate, and preach the gospel, preach that the end is nigh, or other apocalyptic kind of sermons, and that's where actually soap opera comes from. But that's a digression. So this is further proof that establishment conservatives are just as eager as the far left to crush the populist movement. Yeah, of course. I think that's what kind of elected Trump, right? This reactionary movement toward, because of all this, political correctness and censorship going on, and basically all this media, mainstream media outlets, basically telling a big chunk of population that they are, all racist and bad, and they should have all this guilt. And I think it's just reacted in such a way that they elected Trump. This is further proof that establishment conservatives are just as eager as the far left to crush the populist movement. Just wanted to read that again. And okay, let's see. I guess the counter argument to what you are doing is, well, this is a bunch of establishment people deciding they like establishment websites. It's more than that. It's also a bunch of establishment people deciding they don't like anti-establishment websites and wanting to wage financial warfare against them. Unbelievable. So, continue fighting the good fight. Continue, talking about things you want to talk about outside of your house. And continue spreading the information that you want to be spread, and continue to also expose yourself to other points of view, because I'm not saying that you need to be right wing or you need to be left wing, but you need to be exposed to, but you cannot simply poo-poo the other side because they are considered liberal or they are considered conservative. That was my whole point when I was, watching, this video, about the abortion law, how the Supreme Court blocked Louisiana, attempts. My whole point was my whole point is do not try to promote the continued political polarization. Instead, the CNN, Fox News, and other, mainstream media channels, what they should do is expose you to variety of different opinions, variety of different views, and let you as intelligent human being choose which point of view you want to adhere to. And certainly there should not be any kind of censorship. We are not in Soviet Russia. We are not in communist China. That's why we come to this country to to be accepted and to be able to fully express our opinions. Thank you and take care.